From the mysteries of the paranormal to time slips and quantum entanglement, these are unexplained phenomena that scientists blame on parallel universes. So let's start things off with ghosts. You probably didn't think I'd be starting off like this, but I think you could make a pretty good argument for paranormal stuff like this being a sign of possible parallel universe. Almost all of us have heard someone's first-hand account of having seen something, or feeling cold spots, hearing noises that don't seem to have a logical explanation. The usual explanation, aside from the ones made by skeptics, is that these are signs of hauntings, usually a dead person who's not able to fully cross over to the other side, so they remain in this limbo between the world of the living and the dead, tied to the places they once called home. But what if these so-called ghosts aren't actually spirits or souls, but glimpses into another universe? What if what we interpret as paranormal activity could be caused by parallel universes overlapping? Imagine it like looking through a frosted window. You can see movement on the other side, shadows and shapes, but they're not really there in the way we understand it. Maybe at times in certain places, the line between dimensions gets a little fuzzy, and you catch a brief glance into a parallel world. Instead of a ghost haunting you, maybe it's just a glimpse of someone from a different version of reality. Next, we've got time slips. Ever had a moment where you're sure you were somewhere, but everyone else insists you weren't, or vice versa? Now, if this happens to you a lot, definitely see a doctor before chalking it up to what some idiot online like me says, but if you've been cleared of any early signs of dementia, then maybe something stranger could be going on. Some people think these experiences could be linked to parallel universes, the idea being that we can sometimes slip between timelines. One minute you could be at a party, the next you're back home, but with no memory of how you got there. Or you might be walking down a street and suddenly the surroundings look completely different, like you've been dropped into a past version of your city. This sounds pretty ridiculous, and I can't say that I've ever experienced anything like this, but some people say they have. You can find stories like this all over places like Reddit. Not that you should believe everything you read online, but even if a small handful of these stories happen to be true, that is pretty strange. Some people think time slips could happen when two timelines briefly overlap, and your consciousness gets caught in this switch. You're still you, but somehow you're seeing a different version of events, like a time traveler who doesn't even know that they're time traveling. Now let's talk about something a bit more sciencey, quantum entanglement. This is a phenomenon where two particles become linked in such a way that when something happens to one, the other is instantly affected, no matter how far apart they are. Yes, this really does happen, despite the fact that what I just described doesn't seem to follow the rules of space and time. It's as if the particles are somehow aware of each other across these vast distances. We still don't know exactly why this happens, and if you wanted to make the argument, which I am, it could possibly point to, at the very least, a glitch in the Matrix, similar to the parallel universes theory. A glitch in the Matrix meaning that the world around us is an illusion created by who knows what. Point is, our universe may just be one of many. Could we exist in this complex web of overlapping universes where every now and then one of the strands twitches in a way we don't understand, causing a mysterious and unexplainable phenomena like this? Alright, let's talk deja vu. Sure, this gets talked about a lot, but for good reason. It's pretty disconcerting. Every time it happens, it throws me off. I'm always left with this uneasy, existential dread for about 30 seconds before I get on with my day, but it's this brief reminder that despite everything science tells us, and as clear as the world seems at face value, there are a lot of things we just don't understand. It's eerie, but kind of humbling. How can we be experiencing a sequence of events so specific that we logically know that it's the first time we've lived it, and yet somehow there's this feeling in the pit of our stomach that, no, we've been here before, seen this play out. It's not a memory, more like something you've seen in a dream, maybe? It's vivid yet hazy at the same time. There are tons of theories on deja vu. One being that you have lived the exact moment, but in a different life. That time either runs in a constant loop, or a parallel universe running right along our own briefly overlaps and gives us that strange, uncanny feeling. Think of it like your brain momentarily accessing memories from a different version of yourself, one who's living a slightly different life, but maybe in this other version you did something exactly like what you're doing right now, and for a split second your brain glitches and pulls that memory into the current moment. You're living in the present moment, but your mind receives a kind of signal from a different timeline. I don't know what god this guy pissed off, but his life story sounds pretty biblical, in a wrathful punishment sort of way. This poor sap named Walter Summerford was struck by lightning 4 times. 3 times while he was alive and once after his death, just as a final middle finger from above. It all started in 1918 when Summerford, then a major in the British Army during World War I, was struck by lightning on a battlefield in Belgium. Already wild being struck by lightning as is, especially while in battle though, as if life wasn't already hard enough for him. Anyway, that was just strike 1, and it left him paralyzed from the waist down. He persevered though, and after finally recovering and retiring to Vancouver, where he had a solid 6 years lightning free, he was struck a second time while fishing, leaving him paralyzed on the right side. Somehow he survived again though. Then in 1930, while taking a walk in the park, one of the most innocent, inoffensive things a person can do, he was struck by lightning a 3rd time, this time leaving him bedridden until his death 2 years later. But as I said, he wasn't even off the hook yet, as his gravestone was then struck by lightning, making it the 4th strike in his life, or afterlife. In Monza, Italy, King Umberto I and a local restaurant owner had a very strange encounter. The 2 men were nearly identical in appearance, first off, down to their face and build, and after discussing their striking resemblance, they discovered even more eerie similarities. Both were born on March 14th of 1844 in the same town. Both men had married women named Margherita. The restaurant owner even opened his restaurant on the same day that King Umberto was crowned King of Italy. Then on July 29th, 1900, King Umberto was informed that the restaurant owner had been killed that day in a mysterious accident. Well, just after the king received the news, an anarchist named Gaetano Bresci fired at the king 4 times, killing him instantly. The man had been seeking to avenge the people killed in Milan during the suppression of the riots in May of 1898. This next story is unbelievable and incredibly beautiful in a way. So in 1914, a German mother had her infant son's photo taken and left the film to be developed at a store in Strasbourg. When World War I broke out though, she couldn't go back for it of course, so she just assumed that she'd never get to see the photo. Well, fast forward 2 years and she bought a new film plate in Frankfurt to take a picture of her newborn daughter. She developed the photo and was upset at first. There was something wrong with the picture, but when she looked more closely, she noticed the photo was a double exposure. Her daughter's picture was overlaid with her son from 2 years before. Somehow her original undeveloped film had been mislabeled as unused and was sold back to her. So she finally got to develop her son's photo, just not in the way she'd been expecting. In 1838, Edgar Allan Poe wrote the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, where the crew of a stranded ship draws straws to decide who will be sacrificed for food. The unlucky soul is a cabin boy named Richard Parker, who ends up being killed and eaten by the others. In true Poe fashion, it's a grim tale, but unlike his more fantastical work, this one would actually play out in real life. In 1884, a ship sank, and the survivors were stranded at sea, starving. They drew straws to determine who would be sacrificed, and the person picked was the cabin boy, whose name was Richard Parker. Fictional account from nearly half a century earlier seemed to mirror a real-life event, almost like the story had somehow been predicting the future. Henry Ziegland was born in 1861 in Honey Grove, Texas. He was a farmer who got involved with a woman named Charla Harris, but in 1883 he ended the relationship. Charla was devastated. So devastated that she ended up taking her own life. Her brother was completely distraught. He blamed Henry for his sister's death and decided that he wanted some revenge. Well, one day he snuck into Henry's barn with a firearm and fired at him. The bullet only grazed Henry, but he smartly played dead. What Henry didn't know though was that the bullet had lodged itself into a tree by the barn. Well, 20 years later, Henry decided he was going to chop down that very tree. It was too thick for an axe, so he decided he'd need to blow it up. When the explosion went off, Henry died instantly. It wasn't from the blast. The bullet that had been lodged in the tree 2 decades earlier flew out at him. Absolutely nuts. And we're kicking off this list with the ghost patient. In this security camera footage from a hospital in Argentina, we see a security guard sitting at his desk. It's late and there's nobody else in the foyer aside from the guard. At least that's the way it looks to us. We watch as the automatic doors open, as if someone is entering into the hospital. Only there's nobody actually there. Or is there? The security guard seems to think there is, because he gets up from his desk and walks over to check this invisible person in. We watch him talk to what looks like thin air before allowing whoever or whatever it is inside. The guard later said that he had seen a woman walk into the hospital. She said she'd left something in the room she'd been staying in. The staff were of course pretty creeped out by the footage, especially when it was discovered that the name he'd taken down when letting the invisible entity into the hospital was the same name as a woman who had died just the previous day. Coming in at number 9, we have Miss Abigail. In this footage taken in a building in Houston, Texas, we see a security guard once again having a conversation with what looks like thin air. His coworker watching the cameras is filming her screen, completely confused by what she's seeing. Then she radios in to the guard asking who he's talking to. He responds by saying he's speaking with Miss Abigail, who's looking for Mr. Griffin. The coworker becomes even more confused now, saying, "You sure you're saying Miss Abigail? She died 2 years ago." She then goes on to say that there's nobody in the hallway with him. Suddenly it sinks in for the guard and he turns around and starts running down the hallway. Fair enough, that would probably be my reaction as well. Even if this is just a hoax, it's such a creepy idea. Imagine having what you think is just some innocuous conversation with somebody, only to be told, hey bud, nobody there with you. I also have this haunting image in my mind of how this supposed ghost looked once the guard was told he wasn't talking to anyone. Did Miss Abigail disappear? Or even creepier, and what I'm kind of picturing is that she just stood there completely still, staring blankly at him until he ran away. Next on the list we have the poltergeist. In the security footage captured in a 200-year-old school in Cork Island called Deer Park CBS, we see a series of paranormal phenomena take place. First, a door at the end of the hallway seemingly opens on its own before violently slamming shut. Then a filing cabinet or locker starts rocking back and forth out of nowhere. One of the lockers opens up and papers start flying out on their own. A wet floor sign suddenly flips out. I don't know, it spins around and collapses. Whatever was causing this to happen was not in a good mood that night. Number 7, the hospital ghost. This is a story that was posted to Reddit by user Dr. Basio. Goes as follows. I work as a doctor in a hospital in the UK and was on a night shift that was particularly quiet. Some of the nurses were sitting around telling this story. A young doctor was running to a crash call. Our hospital is a giant L shape, with the front entrance being at the bend. A woman stopped him and asked him which way the exit was. He directed her and kept running. When he got to the patient, it was the woman who had asked him for directions. She had died. Apparently it got caught on the CCTV that the doctor stopped running midway down the hallway and gestured toward the exit while saying something to no one in particular. So supposedly, the confused spirit of this patient who had just died spoke to the doctor, who was racing over to save her life. Pretty spooky stuff. And hey, if there's any place where paranormal stuff like this is gonna take place, it's gotta be a hospital. At number 6, we have one that's pretty similar to the Miss Abigail video. This footage was originally uploaded to TikTok by the security guard in the video, Luis de Alvarez, who took it down soon after, utterly traumatized by the entire event. He was working as a night guard and was alone patrolling a floor he was on when he spotted an old lady. We watch as he walks over to who he believes is a person, although we can't see anyone but him in the footage. He begins talking to what he later described as an old lady who was saying she was lost. But another guard tells him over his walkie-talkie that there's nobody there. He's the only one on the floor. The guard was waiting for the elevator, but decided to just leg it out of there as fast as he could. We cut to another angle and he's running through the parking lot and then just out of the building completely. Ran halfway across the city, I'm sure. So I mentioned glitches in the Matrix a bit earlier, so I want to go into more detail on that. This one is very popular online. Glitches in the Matrix are when people claim to experience weird moments where reality seems to glitch out. Like say you notice what looks to be the same person walking by twice in a row, or objects appearing or disappearing out of nowhere, just weird stuff like that. Almost like a video game that's failing to render things correctly. The idea here is that we could be living in a simulation, and every so often, the code that runs the simulation gets a little wonky. But to take it a step further, what if those glitches aren't just errors in a simulation, but signs that our universe is brushing up against another one? In theory, if parallel universes do exist, we could occasionally get a peek into them or experience moments where the fabric of space-time bends. Could be as simple as noticing a repeating pattern in your day, but your brain can't quite reconcile with what you know of reality. It's like your system glitches out because it's trying to process something from another universe that doesn't quite match up with your version. The experience of missing time. This one is a classic, especially when it comes to UFOs. There are tons of stories and cases of people driving around a desolate road late at night when they see a strange light in the sky, and then all of a sudden, hours, or sometimes even days have passed that they just have no recollection of. Missing time. Could this phenomenon be connected to parallel universes? Well, the theory is that these abductees may have actually slipped into another timeline. As for whether aliens are involved or not, who knows? Point is, something could shift in the fabric of space-time and your consciousness jumps into a new version of reality, leaving this gap in your memories. It's not so much that time was stolen from you, it's more like you temporarily just moved into another timeline, and when you returned to your own, it felt like you lost those hours. Quantum tunneling is a very bizarre phenomenon where particles can move through barriers that should, according to physics, be impossible. Picture it like a ball traveling through a solid wall instead of bouncing off it. Yes, this does happen, but the science is very hard to explain. Again though, parallel universes, could they play into this? Could particles be tunneling from one reality to another? Instead of just interacting with the particles in our universe, these particles might slip through some sort of portal into another reality. This could help explain some of the bizarre stuff we see in our world that doesn't really make sense. Random moments where the laws of physics seem to just not apply. When it comes to parallel universes, the rules we know might not work the same way, and particles that can tunnel through different dimensions, well, that could be the key to how those universes are crossing paths, even if we don't always notice. All right, let's switch gears, head up into space. We've got all kinds of mysterious things out there. Strange lights, unexplained radio signals, objects that don't behave how we expect them to. Of course, you know where I'm going with this one, but even some scientists wonder if some of these things could be evidence of parallel universes. Take the WOW signal, for example, an unexplained radio signal detected by astronomers back in 1977 that lasted for about 72 seconds and then disappeared. No one knows where it came from or what caused it. Some think it could have come from a parallel universe, trying to communicate with ours. And yes, it sounds pretty far-fetched, and maybe it is. Maybe there's a much more mundane explanation, but also consider just how vast and mysterious space is, and how little we really understand of it. Looking at it that way, the possibility of another universe interacting with ours in some way seems pretty plausible. Every so often we hear about things that seem to appear out of nowhere. Like maybe you're in your living room, you find a book on your coffee table that you're pretty sure you didn't buy, or maybe you swear you put your keys in one place but you find them sitting in a completely different spot and no one moved them. Or the reverse, objects just disappear without a trace. Can most situations like this be chalked up to our brains just sucking at remembering things sometimes? Sure, but could there also be something else going on in very rare cases? One theory is that this could be the result of objects slipping in and out of parallel universes. Say you leave your socks sitting on the edge of your bed, but when you turn around to grab them, they're nowhere to be found. So you look all over your room only to find that they're actually sitting on your bathroom counter. What if they were simply sucked into another version of reality for a while? Maybe it was in a parallel universe for a second, but when the reality shift happens, it comes back, just not in the same place you left them. Mandela effect. The phenomenon where a large group of people remember something in a certain way only to find out that it never actually happened that way at all. I think what's so interesting about this one is that unlike stuff like deja vu or objects going missing, situations that are a lot more likely to happen in isolation, Mandela effects are corroborated by mass amounts of people. For some context, the name Mandela effect comes from people remembering Nelson Mandela dying in the 80s, when in fact he passed away in 2013. Some people think this is a glitch in our collective memory. like we've all tapped into a parallel universe where things happen just slightly differently. The list of famous Mandela effects is huge, and just continues to grow, from the famous Bernstein Bears versus Bernstein Bears confusion to the misremembered lines from famous movies like Star Wars and Forrest Gump. It's almost like there is a version of reality that some people are still hanging on to, still remembering, even though it never actually existed in our timeline. Again, are these just examples of our collective memory not being the most reliable, or could we just possibly be momentarily connecting to another universe where things unfolded just slightly differently?
Number 10. Backyard aliens. In late April of this year, Las Vegas police officers investigated reports of 2 unknown entities falling from the sky, and on the same night a nearby resident called 911 to report something 100% not human on their property. According to authorities, a man called 911 to report 2 unknown entities in his backyard after he and his family saw a similar object fall from the sky. The man described the creature as 8 to 10 feet tall beings that appear to be like aliens with big mouths, big shiny eyes, and added that they're 100% not human. They were looking right at him and his family from their backyard, and he kept clarifying that it was not a joke and that he was terrified of whatever was lurking in the dark. While initially open for several days, the department has since closed the case. The family said officials returned to the home over several days to investigate. Representatives from nearby Creech and Nellis Air Force bases said they were not involved in the incident and suggested contacting the Metro Police. A spokesperson for the Pentagon did not immediately respond to questions regarding this event. So who knows what they truly saw? Number 9. Strange lights. Since the 1940s and possibly even earlier, there have been a strange light phenomenon observed in the Hessdalen Valley, Norway. The spectacle has a form of white or yellow light of unknown origin standing or floating above ground level. Between 1981 and 1984, the lights were observed up to 20 times per week, but have drastically reduced in frequency since then, about 10 to 20 times per year. Now, why the decrease all of a sudden? No one knows, and no one knows where the lights come from, but UFO enthusiasts took this as a sign that the valley was a portal to other worlds. Now, it wasn't just conspiracy theorists that were interested in this, as the strange bursts of light in the 1980s attracted physicists too, interest piqued by the idea of some unexplained natural phenomenon. In the decades since, scientists have determined the glow likely comes from air turned into plasma, and despite ongoing research and numerous working hypotheses, there is no convincing explanation of the origin of these lights, and it seems like it will always be a mystery. Number 8. Cities in the sky. On April 21st, 2017, the citizens from China were awestruck to see an image of a sky floating in the clouds. This phenomena had happened years before in 5 different locations in China, but there was still no clear clarification on how or why this happens. On April 21st, 2017, the citizens from China were awestruck to see the image of a city floating in the clouds. This phenomenon had also happened years before in 5 different locations in China, but there was still no clear clarification on how or why this happens. Some scientists came up with different theories, such as aliens attempting to cross from a different dimension, the second coming of Christ, or is it the image of the holographic test by the Chinese government? Another possible explanation is the infrequent weather event called Fata Morgana, where the light that passes through heat waves causes a duplication effect. However, that seemed unlikely because the image on the sky didn't match the skyline below it. Number 7. The Tunguska Incident. The Tunguska Incident was an approximately 12 megaton explosion that occurred near the Tuska River in Russia on the morning of June 30th, 1908. A massive fireball dashed to the ground before exploding about 6 kilometers above the Earth's surface, and this explosion slaughtered a lot of animals and completely crushed the surrounding forest. It even sent a hot shockwave for miles. Now, some scientists believe that the fireball was an asteroid. However, the biggest mystery in this event was that the massive explosion left no crater and no meteor material that can be found to be examined. Others say that the object which blasted into the sky was composed of ice, and that's why it left no debris, and the Tunguska event is the largest impact event on Earth in recorded history, though much larger impacts occurred in prehistoric times. An explosion of this magnitude would be capable of destroying a large metropolitan area. It has been mentioned numerous times in popular culture and has also inspired real-world discussion of astrophysics asteroid impact avoidance. Number 6. The Phoenix Lights. The Phoenix Lights were a series of widely cited unidentified flying objects observed in the sky over the southwestern states of Arizona and Nevada on March 13, 1997. Lights of varying descriptions were seen by thousands of people between 7:30 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. in a space of about 300 miles from the Nevada line, Phoenix, to the edge of Tucson. Some witnesses described seeing what appeared to be a huge carpenter square-shaped UFO containing 5 spherical lights. There were 2 distinct events involved in the incident: a triangular formation of lights seen to pass over the state, and a series of stationary lights seen in the Phoenix area. Now, this wasn't the only time the lights were seen there, as many reports of strange lights over the state in 2007 and 2008 also happened. This event has since become one of the most notorious UFO sightings in history.
Number 5. Night shift. Oh boy, working alone at night in a big empty building, just the thought of that sends shivers down my spine. In this story, posted to Reddit by True Denter, they describe their encounter with a man who seemingly disappeared into thin air. I used to work at a place which was required to be manned 24 hours a day. Anyways, security is kinda tight. Bars on windows, multiple locked doors to get to where I am. They would give me work to do during the night, but underestimated how quickly I could get it done. So now it's getting to be the last third of my shift when all of a sudden I hear a door close. I look at the security camera and see someone walking down a hall towards my room. First I thought it was just somebody that came in ridiculously early, so I turn around and wait for them to come in, but nobody came in, and the hairs start rising on my back. Now, this isn't a really big building, so I figure I'll find the guy wherever he is. I start checking offices and storage rooms, but come up empty-handed. However, I do see that a fire door had shut. I go to try and rewind the camera, but the digital recording is password protected, and I don't know the password. Anyways, the whole thing freaked me out. The way the person was walking down the hallway, like a determined walk right to where I was. So I sit with my spine tingling for the last couple hours of my shift, and finally people start coming in. My replacement shows up and I tell her what I saw, and at this point I figure I must have imagined the whole thing. I'm told to go home, and the manager and the girl who replaced me would look over the camera. After getting home, I call my manager and ask what was on the camera. So they said that the video showed the fire door closing, but then the video froze for about an hour. The next thing it records is me reopening the door. Next up, we have Son's Ghost. In 2019, a woman named Jennifer Hodge received an alert on her phone from her Nest Cam, which detects movement and sound, reading, "Take a look. Your entryway camera spotted a person." She'd been watching TV with her daughter and was about to fall asleep when she got this notification. They looked at the image, and it showed what looked to be a ghostly figure standing in their kitchen. Her daughter immediately said, "Mom, look, it looks like Robbie." Robbie was her brother and Jennifer's son, who had passed away 2 years earlier. But they both agreed that the figure in the photo captured by the camera did look exactly like Robbie. They immediately ran to the kitchen, but there was nobody there, and no signs of forced entry either. Hodge described feeling comforted by the situation though, saying, "I felt like he was letting me know he's happy in heaven." Number 3, the bike. This is another story posted to Reddit by user TJS252, who wrote the following. I used to have an apartment pretty close to my office. The office building was kind of on its own relative to the city's commercial district. I sold the apartment, and before moving into my new home, I left my bicycle chained to the building's bike rack. It was only to be there for a few days, and at no man's land before I was able to move it into my new place. Anyway, one day in the middle of the week, I come into the office, walk past the bike rack, and notice it's completely empty. The building has a bunch of security cameras, and one more or less is facing the bike rack. I sit and watch the security tape with the IT guy. We're watching, see everyone leave the office the night before, see the bike, keep watching, then all of a sudden, poof, bike gone. We slowed the tape down, and it seemed like when you're watching a digital cable or satellite and the image gets garbled, literally it was bike there, then poof, gone. And the tape's timestamp, it literally happened in 1 second. I assume my bike got taken down to the upside down. Coming at number 2, we have the ghost attack. Here we see a security camera footage that looks to be coming from an office or apartment building. We see this guy walking down the hallway when all of a sudden something sends him flying back to the floor. You can see a very obvious dark shadowy shape appear, which then begins dragging the dude down the hallway by the leg. Luckily it doesn't drag him very far before disappearing though, and the man, now free from the mysterious entity's grasp, stumbles to his feet and starts booking it back the way he came. Whatever friend he was seeing, appointment he had booked, whatever it wasn't happening that day. Being violently dragged down a hallway by a shadowy entity kinda has a way of disrupting your plans for the day, I reckon. Now, as to whether this video is real or not, let me know what you think. I think it's a well done video, but yeah, I'm just not sold on the whole ghost thing yet. I wanna be though. And finally, we have the nursing home specter. A security guard named Jay Brown was working the night shift at a nursing home in Chicago when he spotted some sort of ghostly figure floating past the front desk. In this video, he's watching back at the security camera footage as he films, talking about what he saw. If you look closely at the footage, you actually see some sort of misty shape floating around in the corner. You watch as Brown stands up, confused and terrified as to what he's witnessing. At one point, he even throws a book at the ghostly mass, but then he decides to just take a deep breath, calm down, and get on with his shift. You know, stuff happens at work. Rude patients, long hours, sometimes there's a ghost in the corner, you gotta whip a book at and then just get on with your day. Brown stated that whatever the strange entity is, it seems to show up every few months. We're gonna kick off this list with cold spots. So back in 2015, astrophysicists in Hawaii discovered a large, barren area in space. It looked as if everything in the area had just been like erased away, a giant black void where 10,000 galaxies should have been. It soon became known as a cold spot, and scientists at Durham University have a pretty interesting theory about this mysterious supervoid, that perhaps this cold spot is the result of a parallel universe colliding with our own, shoving all this energy out of that particular area of space, and that maybe we're just one bubble universe out of trillions. Of course, it's only a theory, but it's a pretty cool idea. And speaking of bubble universes, number 9, bubble universes. According to the theory of cosmic inflation, the early universe underwent a rapid expansion. In this scenario, different regions of space would have undergone independent inflation, creating bubble universes within a larger multiverse. So, shortly after the Big Bang, the universe underwent an incredibly rapid expansion, like a cosmic blowing up of a balloon. This is the essence of the cosmic inflation theory. The idea here is that during this rapid expansion, multiple pockets of space-time formed, each becoming its own universe with its own set of physical laws and conditions and who knows what else. And these separate pockets, like bubbles, could exist as distinct universes with a grander multiverse. So while we go about our lives in our corner of the cosmos, countless other universes could be out there, each with its own unique arrangement of matter and energy. At number 8, we have black holes. So yeah, black holes have been talked about to death, but not by me on this channel yet, so I'm excited to talk about them. Black holes are cosmic bodies possessing a gravitational force that is so powerful that nothing, not even light, can escape from their grasp. They're formed from the remnants of massive stars that have collapsed and are characterized by an incredibly dense core known as the singularity, and the event horizon, the boundary surrounding the singularity, which marks the point of no return, beyond which the gravitational pull becomes overwhelming and you're just getting sucked in no matter what you do. Now, as to what happens to everything that gets pulled into the black hole, that's the question. There are only theories. Some scientists posit that there is no other side of a black hole, while others theorize objects could be, maybe pulled into the future or across time, the quantum loop gravity theory. And then you have the idea that perhaps black holes pull objects in and spit them out in other parts of the universe, or maybe even another universe altogether. There are all kinds of theories, but the point is black holes are just an enigma. The mathematical universe theory. This theory suggests that different mathematical structures represent separate universes. As there are infinite mathematical possibilities, there would be an infinite number of universes. It suggests that our universe is made of pure mathematics, which is bad for me. I failed terribly in math in school. So like a giant cosmic equation, every aspect of our existence, from particles to galaxies, can be described and understood through math. But here's where the multiverse aspect comes into play. The theory proposes that different mathematical structures give rise to different universes, each with its own funky set of rules. So imagine an infinite collection of parallel universes where anything goes in terms of physics and math. In one universe, gravity might pull you sideways, while in another, it might pull you up. So there's a possibility that our universe is just one in an infinite amount. Number 6, the slap. So this one's a little bit different. This is a story posted to Reddit, so you gotta take it with a grain of salt. Who the heck knows if anyone posting stuff like this online is actually telling the truth, or maybe just confused about the things they saw. But skepticism aside, it's kind of a freaky story, and if the multiverse really does exist and can perhaps overlap at times, causing a glitch in the matrix if you will, then who knows. So the story was posted to Reddit by ZJoe12. So one day, a guy had been standing outside his apartment building smoking a cigarette. Unexpectedly, his girlfriend shows up in a taxi. He was surprised but pleased to see her, but she just scowled at him and then slapped him across the face without even uttering a word. And then she stormed past him and entered his building. He followed her to his apartment, questioning her along the way. Inside, she swiftly gathered her belongings, hurling a few items at him before accusing him of cheating, and then she said she never wanted to see him again and left the apartment in a taxi. So the guy's just standing there on the empty street, totally confused, scared, and sad because his girlfriend's just broken up with him. But just moments after the taxi had driven away, he was suddenly embraced from behind by the same woman, his girlfriend. He's very alarmed. He turns to face her, and she greets him cheerfully, totally oblivious to what had just gone on. The guy was completely confused, so he hurriedly rushed upstairs without even saying anything to her. He reaches his apartment and discovers that her bag is still missing. The broken items are still there. The door still wide open. Both of them found themselves utterly bewildered and shook. It seemed impossible that he would have mistaken her for someone else, especially since she was an only child. So yeah, twin theories are out the window. They took a look at the building's surveillance footage, and sure enough, the recordings confirmed his account of following a girl into his apartment, although the camera angles and video quality made it difficult to discern her face clearly. Now, if this is actually true, there could still be a rational explanation, but perhaps this is an instance of a parallel universe colliding with ours for a brief time.
Number 5, skyquakes. I didn't even know that skyquakes were a thing, so for those of you who don't know, skyquakes are mysterious booms from the sky, but are not thunder, and they are heard all over the world. The mysterious booms sound like cannon fire rumbling down from the sky. Now, they are commonly heard near water, occasionally rattling windows and plates. Now, some have been explained by military aircraft breaking the sound barrier, but that doesn't account for reports of skywakes heard as far back as 1824. Now, scientists have come up with a few likely causes. Near coasts, the booms may be caused by enormous waves crashing against cliffs. Sand dunes are also capable, through unexplained mechanisms, of producing sounds, including on rare occasions, large booms. Other options are meteors generating sonic booms as they speed into the atmosphere, shock waves caused by coronal mass ejections from the sun smashing into the Earth's magnetic field, distant volcano eruptions, far-off thunder redirected through the upper atmosphere, deep earthquakes making noises by cracking the crust, and gas belching up up from underground vents beneath the ocean or lake beds. But the fact that it could be so many things without a definite answer is freaky. Number 4. The Belgian UFO wave. The Belgian UFO wave began in November 1989. Reports were filed many weeks after the event. Now, many of the reports related a large object flying at low altitude. Some reports also stated that the craft was a flat, triangular shape with lights underneath. The Belgian UFO wave peaked with the events of the night of March 30th to 31st, 1990. On that night, one unknown object was tracked on radar, and 2 Belgian Air Force F-16s were sent to investigate, with neither pilot reporting seeing the object. No reports were received from the public on that date, but over the next 2 weeks, reports from 143 people who claimed to have witnessed the object were received, all of them after the event. Over the ensuing months, many others claimed to have witnessed these events as well. Following the incident, the Belgian Air Force released a report detailing the events of that night. Members of the waiver gendarmerie who had been sent to confirm the original report described 4 lights now being arranged in a square formation, all making short, jerky movements before gradually losing their luminosity and disappearing in 4 separate directions at around 1:30 a.m. Number 3. Forest Grove Sound. In 2016, a high-pitched noise was heard intermittently at night in Forest Grove, Oregon. The Department of Forestry determined that their equipment was not the cause of the sound, and the Washington Post described the noise as sounding like a giant flute playing off pitch, car brakes, or a steam whistle. NBC News described it as akin to a bad one-note violin solo broadcast over a microphone with non-stop feedback. It reportedly lasted from 10 seconds to several minutes at a time. The noise occurred near Gales Creek Road. Neither the City of Forest Grove Public Works Department nor the fire department were able to explain the noise. According to NW Natural, there were no problems with gas lines in the Forest Grove at the time. In February 2016, Andrew Dawes, a professor of physics at Pacific University, mapped the locations where the noise had been heard, although the results were inconclusive and did not suggest a single location. Throughout February 2016, approximately 200 calls were made to the Forest Grove Police Department, according to Captain Mike Herb, who said that most of the calls were suggesting explanations for the sound, ranging from frogs to aliens to Bigfoot. In late February 2016, the Forest Grove Police Department announced via Facebook that the noise did not pose a safety hazard, and that the police announced that they were halting their investigation until further information appeared. However, after February 2016, the noise was not heard again. Number 2. UFO photograph. A photo taken in St. Paris, Champaign County in 1932 is considered one of the earliest possible photographs of a UFO ever recorded. It shows George Sutton, a local resident, and what appears to be a classic UFO-shaped object over his left shoulder. Skeptics say the object is simply a street lamp, but according to the folklore that surrounds this image, there were no electric streetlights along this road in 1932, nor are any wires or poles visible in the image. The photo is also intriguing because it predates the flying saucer craze of the late 1940s and 50s. It was taken before the alleged Roswell UFO crash in 1947 and 6 years prior to the broadcast of the War of the Worlds in 1938, when some people believed that aliens were attacking Earth. In other words, the person who took this photograph either captured a street lamp, a real UFO, or was way ahead of the curve in terms of pulling a good hoax. But I'd like to think it's a real UFO. And coming in at number 1 is Marfa lights. Yellow orbs like lamp-lit basketballs hover and twinkle and at times gyrate over the shrubby high desert ground in the shadows of the Chinani Mountains. They appear in the darkness south of US 90 between Alpine and Marfa. Journalist Michael Hall wrote about seeing the Marfa lights in a June 2006 story in Texas Month. Yellowish white lights that glowed, faded, disappeared, and returned in different places. Sometimes they changed colors, other times they split apart. I couldn't tell if they were 10 miles away or 100, the size of a car or a house. Now, just about everyone in Marfa and many who have visited have a story like that. Now, no one really knows the answer to these lights, but some believe it is the ghost of Apache Chief Alasti, who allegedly haunts the area. Other claims it's space aliens trying to contact us, or the ghosts of Spanish conquistadors.
One of the biggest mysteries scientists have about our universe is why there is more matter than antimatter. So first off, what is the difference between matter and antimatter? Well, matter is what everything around us is made of. Atoms, molecules, everything. Antimatter is essentially the opposite, with particles that have the same mass but opposite charge to their matter counterparts. Now, according to our current understanding of physics, when matter and antimatter come into contact, they annihilate each other. So if the universe had equal amounts of matter and antimatter when it began, they should have annihilated each other, leaving nothing behind. Thankfully though, that's not the case. We're surrounded by matter. We have stars and planets, entire galaxies. Me and you are made of matter. Antimatter is much more rare. Scientists find it in cosmic rays and particle accelerators. So this lopsidedness between matter and antimatter is a bit of a mystery. Scientists have been trying to figure out why there's this imbalance for decades. There are some theories, but none have been definitively proven yet. One idea is that maybe in the early universe, during the Big Bang, there were tiny differences in how matter and antimatter behaved. These differences could have led to a slight excess of matter, which then went on to form all the stuff we see today, but we really don't know for sure. Next up we have quantum tunneling. So let's just pretend we have an electron trapped in an energy well. For the sake of this, we'll just imagine this well is like a valley surrounded by very tall mountainous hills. In theory, the particle would need enough energy to climb over the hills to escape the well. But that's not always the case. Quantum tunneling is this phenomena where particles pass through barriers that, according to physics, should be impossible to cross, even if a particle doesn't seemingly have enough energy to overcome a barrier. There's still a small probability that it'll just tunnel through anyway. This phenomenon is pretty important in various fields like electronics and nuclear physics. For example, it's the reason why electrons can escape from atoms in a process called electron emission. But why is quantum tunneling such a mysterious thing, you ask? Well, for one, it's just not how things work in our everyday experience. Like we're not encountering objects spontaneously passing through barriers without any visible means of doing so. But at the quantum level, tunneling happens all the time. Another mystery is the question of why some particles tunnel and some don't. If we watch a pot of water on the stove, does it boil faster? If we stare at our fingernails long enough, will they grow faster? Of course not. I mean, that's just a preposterous idea, right? Well, not at the quantum level, apparently. The quantum Zeno effect is this strange phenomenon where frequent observation can actually prevent, say, an atom from changing or evolving. It's named after the Greek philosopher Zeno, who rejected the idea of space-time and motion. And this phenomenon is named after him because it does show how constant observation can make it seem like an atom isn't changing at all. Even though, if it wasn't constantly being measured, it would have changed, if that makes any sense at all. Yeah, this took me some time to wrap my head around. Let's look at it this way though. If you leave an atom alone, it can evolve or change freely according to the laws of quantum mechanics. For example, it might decay from an excited state to a lower energy state. But if you keep checking on it frequently, like shining a light on it, measuring it, you basically freeze its evolution. I don't know, pretty nuts. Electrons can exhibit both wave-like and particle-like behavior in a phenomenon known as wave-particle duality. So imagine you're watching a tennis ball being thrown at a wall. Normally you'd expect it to behave like a particle. It has a specific position and you can predict where it'll bounce, but if we shrink down to the quantum level and throw an electron at a barrier, it doesn't behave like a neat little particle. Instead, it spreads out like a wave passing through multiple holes in the barrier simultaneously. This duality means particles can have characteristics of both waves and particles depending on how we observe or measure them. When we're not looking, they behave like waves, spreading out and interfering with themselves. But when we try to measure them, they suddenly act like particles with specific positions. This is kind of hard to wrap our heads around because we're used to things being either one thing or another, not both at the same time. And to make things even more confusing, observing or measuring the particles can actually influence their behavior, as we stated before. This is the famous observer effect in quantum mechanics. It's as if the particles know when we're watching and change their behavior accordingly. What does this all mean in the grand scheme of things? I have no damn idea, but if scientists are intrigued and confused by it, then so am I. Next, we have quantum entanglement, which seems to ignore the laws of space and time altogether, and if that's not baffling, I don't know what is. Imagine you have two particles that become connected to the point that the state of one particle instantly influences the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. Sounds crazy, but this is a thing. When two particles are entangled, scientists can measure the polarization of one particle and find it to be, say, vertically polarized, and then instantly know that the other particle's polarization is the exact same, even if it's thousands of miles away. It's pretty obvious why this is crazy. In everyday physics, something can only really have an effect in one general area, and nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. But with quantum entanglement, changes to one entangled particle seem to happen instantaneously, regardless of the distance between the two. This phenomenon has even led Einstein to call it spooky action at a distance. Scientists have tested quantum entanglement in tons of different experiments, and every time it holds up. But as for exactly why, we don't know for sure. It's almost like the particles are telepathically communicating. And quantum entanglement plays a big role in quantum teleportation. Teleportation. Yeah, I like the sound of that. We're getting science fiction-y now. So imagine you have two people, dude 1 and dude 2, and they want to send information about a quantum particle from dude 1's location to dude 2's location. Problem is, you can't make an exact copy of a quantum state and then send it through space. So instead of trying to copy the quantum state and send it directly, Dude 1 and Dude 2 use a process called quantum teleportation. The first dude and the second dude create a pair of entangled particles, like we discussed before. Again, now they're connected, so whatever happens to one particle instantly affects the other, no matter how far apart they are. Dude 1 then combines the particle he wants to teleport with his half of the entangled pair and performs a special measurement on both particles. This measurement changes the state of the entangled pair in a very specific way, depending on the state of the particle he wants to teleport. Next, he sends the results of the measurement to Dude 2 using regular communication, like a phone call or an email. This information doesn't actually contain the quantum state of the original particle. Instead, it's just some instructions for Dude 2 on what he needs to do next. Armed with the first guy's instructions now and half of the entangled pair, Dude 2 performs some operations on his entangled particle, transforming his particle into an exact copy of the original particle that Dude 1 wanted to teleport. Basically, Dude 2's particle takes on the state of the original particle as if it were magically transported from Dude 1's location. Next up, we have the simulated multiverse theory. According to this theory, our universe is just one big computer simulation. Yeah, this is the Matrix one. Maybe this is just a simulation, man. Whoa. And as to who could be running it, the possibilities are endless. Extraterrestrial life, humans from the future running a big ancestor simulation. You could go nuts thinking about this, and if there is indeed one simulation running, there could be numerous other ones running simultaneously, each representing a separate universe. Again, just a theory, one that is, as it stands, impossible to really prove, and at the same time can't be disproven either, so we just don't know, and we may never know. So that's a fun idea. And here's another fun idea. Philosopher Preston Green stated that maybe it would be best for us not to figure this one out, because if we were to definitively prove our lives are all taking place in one big complex simulation, the simulation might end. So once again, this one is just a theory, the daughter universes or many worlds theory. This theory is an interpretation of quantum mechanics and suggests that every possible outcome of a situation or event creates a separate universe. Imagine you're faced with a decision, like choosing between two paths. According to this theory, each choice you make would lead to a different universe branching off from your current one. In one universe, you might choose a path A, while another, you might choose path B. Alright, number 3, we have one of my favorites, the Mandela effect. Oh yeah, everybody's groaning. Well, all heard of this one. I still find this one very fascinating though. The Mandela effect is a strange phenomenon. It seems to mess with our collective memories. It refers to instances where a large group of people remember an event, a fact, or a detail in a certain way, only to discover that's not actually how we remembered it. The term originated from the false belief that Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 1980s, which numerous individuals vividly recall happening, despite the fact that he didn't. There are all kinds of famous instances of this for a long time. For a lot of people, myself included, remember the famous line, "Luke, I am your father." Turns out it's just, "No, I am your father." All kinds of examples, and there is a theory that perhaps these collective false memories we have are actually that of some parallel universe that we've split off into, some other timeline and still have remnants of certain memories from the previous timeline. The human brain is weird though, and our memories are not the best source of information, so this one could be totally benign. One of them, for me, I always remember Pikachu. I always thought he had the black bit on the end of his tail, which turns out not to be a thing at all. But anyway. Next up, we have the Vanishing Road. This is another Reddit post, so highly questionable, but still interesting all the same. Posted by Reddit user Padjo95, the story goes as follows. About 4 years ago, I lived in this fairly small fly speck of a town. At the time, I had lived there for about 12 years, so I knew my way around. Our house was about 1.5 miles away from the nearest neighborhood. It was tucked away on a back road with the woods surrounding it. Every now and again, I liked to take walks with my little brother. We headed up the road and decided to try and find a new path or a new clearing that we hadn't discovered yet, when we noticed something a little shocking. Just off the road that led almost directly to the neighborhood, there was a brand new paved road. Every road in that part of town was a gravel road, so seeing an out-of-place paved road was pretty unusual. We came to the conclusion that it must have been made within the last few days, due to the modern but slow growth of the town. However, we had no explanation for how they did it so fast. We decided to explore it a bit. I remember as soon as we set foot on the road, the air became notably colder by at least 5 degrees. It was surrounded by some thick red trees that resembled redwoods, but they were too short and non-native to our state. We walked on the road for about 3 miles until we decided to head back due to it getting dark. At roughly noon the following day, we set back out to explore this place, only to discover that the entire road was now missing. When I say missing, I mean the trees that were cleared to make it had apparently grown back with no sign of the redwood-like trees. We even began to explore the woods once more, but only to find no sign that it ever existed. When we asked our parents about it, they said they knew nothing about any new roadwork being done near us. Alright, and coming in at number 1, deja vu. We've all experienced this. Maybe you're even having a bit of deja vu right now, this very second, because you've heard about deja vu so many times before. But despite how common this phenomenon is, there's never been a definitive explanation for it. The best scientists have been able to explain it is that we're just experiencing something very similar to something that's happened to us before, a memory deep within our psyche that we can't fully recall, so our brain just goes, this exact thing has happened before, your life, it's just one big time loop, repeating over and over again. You get kind of freaked out for about 10 seconds, and then you just go out with the rest of your day, hopefully, unless you just sit there pondering it for too long. But we've never had a definitive 100% true explanation for it, so of course there's all kinds of crazy theories. The common one is that it's a sign we're on the right path in life. Comforting, but not sure how I feel about that one. And of course the theory of the multiverse comes into play with deja vu as well. That maybe deja vu is the result of 2 parallel universes or more perfectly lining up for a brief moment. That a version of ourself from a parallel universe or universes are in the exact same situation, performing the exact same action at the exact same time. I like that a lot more than the idea that our lives are on this constant repeat and deja vu is just us having this brief recollection of the last time we were on this crazy ride. Yeah, I don't enjoy the thought of being feeling stuck in a never-ending loop. Sorry I left you guys with that idea. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson were two of the most important figures in American history. Despite their political differences, they grew closer later in life and actually became pretty good friends. What's really bizarre though is how both of them passed away on the same day. Now that's already quite a coincidence, but the day they passed away, July 4th, 1826, the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the very document they both helped draft. Adams, at the age of 90, had been in relatively good health but collapsed in his reading chair that afternoon. His last words reportedly were, "Jefferson still lives." But no, Jefferson had actually died earlier that day around noon after battling illness for some time. News of their deaths circulated quickly, and across the nation commemorations were held to honor them. The circumstances surrounding their deaths are eerie for sure, but there's some beauty to this story as well. The pair had been political adversaries in the past, but toward the end of their lives they became friends, and in the end they were tied together in a way no one could have ever predicted. Their deaths on the same day have come to kind of symbolize the shared ideals and values that defined the founding of the United States. In 1858, a bizarre coincidence occurred in San Francisco that involved a poker game, a man's death, and an unlikely twist of fate. Robert Fallon, a British man, was killed for cheating at a poker game at the Bella Union Saloon. Fallon's $600 winnings were left behind. See, the superstition at the time was that money won through cheating was unlucky. So the players decided to give the $600 pot to the first stranger who walked by, hoping he'd take Fallon's place at the table and they'd eventually win all the money back. They called a young man over who sat down and incredibly turned that $600 into $2,200. Police soon arrived to investigate the guy who'd just been killed and asked for that $600 back so they could pass it on to Fallon's next of kin. Well, turned out that Fallon's next of kin was right there at the table already. He was the stranger that had been walking by the saloon and took his father's place, only he didn't know it. He hadn't seen his father in 7 years. It's hard to say whether this next woman had terrible luck or incredible luck. It's a kind of a perfect blend of both, really. Violet Jessup's life sounds like something out of a movie, but it's all true. This Irish-Argentine woman survived the sinking of both the Titanic and its sister ship, the Britannic. On April 14, 1912, Jessup was working as a stewardess on the Titanic when it struck an iceberg and began to sink. In the chaos, she was told to serve as an example to non-English speaking passengers, showing them how to board their lifeboats. She eventually made it off the ship, escaping in lifeboat 16. Speaking of the number 16, on November 21st, 1916, Jessup was serving as a nurse on the Britannic when it hit a mine and began sinking in the Aegean River. She grabbed a lifeboat and held on, eventually being rescued. Remarkably, she'd also suffered an injury to her head during the incident. Now, the fact that she'd survived both of these incidents is amazing, but what makes it all even stranger is that before all of this, she'd also sailed on the RMS Olympic, which collided with a British warship in 1911. So she survived all three of these accidents. It just seems like the universe did not want this woman sailing on boats. The first and the last deaths of World War I are a chilling coincidence. John Parr and George Ellison were the first and last British soldiers killed during the war. Parr was killed on August 21st, 1914, only 17 days after Britain declared war. Then on November 11th, 1918, just 90 minutes before the war ended, George Ellison, age 40, was killed. What's strange is that the two soldiers are buried right across from each other in St. Symphorian Military Cemetery, Belgium, separated by only 15 feet of grass. And no, this was not done on purpose. Their graves were placed there without any knowledge of their first and last statuses at the time. Out of every British soldier who died in the First World War, the first and last to die lay right across from each other. It's as if history itself placed them together, almost bookending the war. In the 1920s, American novelist Anne Parrish had an eerie experience while in Paris, also kind of sweet though. While browsing a bookstore, she came across an old book that she remembered fondly from her childhood, Jack Frost and Other Stories. She picked it up, showing it to her husband, telling him about how much she loved the book when she was young. Her husband went to open it, and he noticed there was an inscription on the inside: Anne Parrish, 209 North Weber Street, Colorado Springs. Turned out this was Anne's very same childhood copy of the book. Alright, what exactly is responsible for gravity? Well, in quantum field theory, gravitons are the root cause, the carriers of the gravitational field. The thing is, they've never actually been observed. Gravitons have just been proposed by scientists to explain how gravity works on a very tiny scale, like inside atoms. In the world of tiny particles, everything seems to be controlled by these tiny particles called bosons. For example, photons are bosons that carry light. Scientists think that gravitons might be the bosons that carry gravity. The problem is, unlike light particles, gravitons, if they really do exist, must hardly interact with anything, making them super hard to detect. So even though we think they might be out there, we haven't found a way to prove it yet. But if we ever do catch a graviton, it could unlock a whole new understanding of how gravity works at even the smallest levels. Alright, another one of the biggest mysteries of modern science is dark matter. Dark matter is a substance that makes up a large percentage of the universe, but it doesn't emit, absorb, or reflect light, which makes it invisible. We only know that it exists because of the gravitational effects that it has on visible matter, stars and whatnot. Scientists have some ideas about what dark matter could be though. One leading theory is that it could consist of undiscovered particles that interact weakly with regular matter and light, hence the term dark. These particles don't form atoms like the ones we're familiar with, so they don't emit or reflect light. Dark matter plays a big role in the universe's structure and evolution. Its gravitational pull helps galaxies form and holds them together. Without dark matter, galaxies would just fly apart because of their rotational speeds. Dark energy is a term used to describe the unknown force that's thought to be responsible for the accelerated expansion of the universe. The story begins with observations made in 1998 that showed distant galaxies were moving away from us faster than expected. See, before, scientists thought the expansion of the universe would slow down over time because of the gravitational attraction between galaxies. But these observations showed quite the opposite, that the expansion just continues to speed up over time. To explain this accelerated expansion, scientists proposed the existence of dark energy. Unlike normal matter and energy, dark energy doesn't interact with light or other forms of electromagnetic radiation, which is why it's dark and difficult to detect directly. But what exactly is this dark energy? Well, that's still one of the biggest mysteries in physics. There are some theories that attempt to explain it, but none have been confirmed. And we finish off the list with black holes. Is there anything more mysterious in the universe than black holes? Probably, actually, given the vast size of it. But from what we've seen, these things take the #1 spot for biggest mystery, especially when we try to understand them using the rules of quantum mechanics. At the heart of a black hole, there's this tiny point called a singularity, where everything gets squished into an insanely dense point and then seems to just disappear. And this is where our understanding of physics kind of breaks down. Quantum mechanics tells us that information is never truly lost. All the quantum information about an object can't just disappear. One of the laws of physics states the total amount of quantum information in the universe must be conserved. But it certainly seems like anything that falls into a black hole is just lost forever. This contradiction is known as the black hole information paradox, and this is where tons of theories spring up about exactly what happens to things that get sucked into black holes. Does an object's quantum information just become part of the black hole, and then it just kind of grows larger over time? Is there some kind of void that the objects just exist in somewhere in there? Do black holes act as wormholes, transporting things to other parts of the universe? We really don't know.